What if pain was a guide to make us look inside and equip us with resilience? What tools would we need to master? Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are tuning in from today. You're listening to My Guru, and I'm your host, Anna Maria Bosky. This week's podcast is incredible, incredibly motivating, inspiring, captivating. I speak with a really, really strong and resilient woman, Cole Chance. She's an ex-alcoholic and drug abuser who is in and out of rehabs, detox centers, hospitals, 12-step program rooms throughout her 20s until she overdosed at 29 and finally decided to turn a page in her life. Cole's life is an example, I believe, of how any one of us can turn around our life at any age. Despite her volatile past, she managed to rewrite her story and is now a globally well-known yoga teacher. She's the founder of an online yoga platform, Om Yoga Tribe, and Emerge Recovery, a program to support recovery from addiction. During our conversation, Cole opens up rather deeply about her path with addiction.
My life of wanting to travel the world and all of these things that I desired had completely shrunk into where can I get the next bottle? Where can I get the next fix? Where can I get the next thing? It was like one foot in front of the other. My world had completely shrunk.
The moment she decided that she could be high or she could be happy, and the importance of taking responsibility for her own life. And she does so with such grace and lightness of being. It's really hard to believe that she's lived through what she's lived through and still stays and remains so positive. This podcast is a little bit longer than the other episodes, and disclaimer, was recorded in Ubud, Bali. For any of you who have visited Bali, you probably know that random sounds are inevitable. So there will be odd sounds now and then, so please forgive me. But this podcast goes deep and hits the heart and the soul. So sit back, relax, grab your tea, and enjoy the podcast. Today we are here with the very beautiful, raw, and authentic Cole Chance, who's agreed to speak with us today about her amazingly inspiring journey around addiction and recovery and yoga as a form of medicine for that. So thank you so much for making the time to speak with us today. Or with me. I say with us, but with us.
With me and...
with me.
Yeah.
Today. And thank you for the practice that we just did. Mm-hmm. It was really grounding and very grateful for it. And let's just start off with the obvious question, which is, who are you and what do you do?
I am Cole Chance, and currently I'm living in Bali teaching yoga, and I teach online. I teach retreats around the world.
I'd love to know if you could share a little bit about like your personal journey with addiction.
Yeah, I don't remember a lot of my childhood. Whenever I was 13, I tried alcohol for my first time, and a life that I didn't know was black and white turned into Technicolor. It's like that part in The Wizard of Oz, like she wakes up and there's colors, and that's exactly what it felt like. I remember it clearly to this day. And I was at a friend's house. Her parents were out of town, and we got into their liquor cabinet. And I remember swimming in her pool on an inner tube, looking up at the stars, and I was completely in awe, and not of the stars, but of the feeling in my body. And I promised myself, I'm gonna do this forever. It was so, I have found the golden ticket. So that's what, drink a little bit and a little bit here and there. I will say one thing. I was having some social anxiety. I think whenever I was probably that year or maybe a little bit before, I started to be self-conscious for the first time. Like I never remember having any kind of confidence issues whenever I was younger until I went to middle school. So it's probably the time when the hormones start to kick in. And there starts to be like, I started seeing things more hierarchical. Like there were the cool kids and then the not cool kids and then the groups. It's like I started seeing segments of people more than I ever realized. So then I remember wanting to be in certain groups and wanting certain people to like you and things like this. So I think I was getting some sort of, a little bit of anxiety around that, which went away when I drank. And I was a cool kid, I guess. So I was already on my way. Like I have no qualms that I would have already been, that I would have been an alcoholic regardless. But whenever I was 14, the first time that I ever had sex, I was sneaking out of the house with my older boyfriend. I got pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah. So at 14, I think I was in ninth grade. Yeah. I was a freshman. My parents found out. My parents are very Christian, very conservative. We were living in Oklahoma, which is a very Christian conservative town. And it was with an African American, which Oklahoma is not the least racist place in America. And yeah, so it was quite something. And I went to get an abortion, and there were protesters lined up.
What? Outside?
Oh yeah, protesters with signs, like the whole picket thing.
Okay.
Saying what they thought. It was traumatic. It was really intense. But I digested that I didn't like do something bad, that I was bad. So I set out to like prove this, and I wasn't able to process it. I don't even know, like, if a 14-year-old, like, I don't know what could have been done differently. I was just like got angry. So instead of like letting my mother know or like going through the grieving and sadness and stuff like this, I just got angry. I got angry at my mom. So I just blamed it all on my mom somehow. Like there was no rational reason. I was just like, that's who I was going to like put all of my anger towards for whatever I was feeling. And at school, I would like find somehow we have a radar. Addicts and alcoholics like have a radar for other addicts and alcoholics. So right away, I would find who was smoking pot, who was eating acid. So within like the first week, I'm arrested at a party. And, I do this for a while, I get in trouble, they move me to another school. Same thing, I'm getting in trouble. I'm just continually starting doing cocaine and then ecstasy and just party is all we're thinking about. Party, when's the next one? But you forget that groveling pain the next days and the hangovers, which ended up being withdrawals. It ended up not being hangovers at all. And my body actually physically withdrawing. So I did this back and forth, going to treatment, coming back out often. Like often I would drink the same week. I would continue to go right back out to it.
Straight away?
Straight away.
After the rehab, you'd go get a drink, like within that week?
Yeah, once I drank on the plane ride home.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm bad, remember? But I was known as like a big party girl. And the first time that I think I was 24, 25, and one of the rehabs that I went to was in Santa Cruz, California, and that's where I took my first yoga class. It might have been a little bit. No, it's probably about the right age. And I remember going into the yoga class, and it was in the redwood forest in Santa Cruz. It's so beautiful there. And the yoga shala was all glass, so you could see the trees. I swear, like the birds were chirping like super loud, or like more loud than I'd ever heard. And the sun was shining beams everywhere. The yoga teacher's voice sounded like an angel. Everything was like angelic. And then I was on my yoga mat detoxing. I could like smell alcohol coming out of my system. I was shaking. I was dirty, like physically. I had bruises all over my body. And just that juxtaposition between the two was so startling. Because normally you kind of surround yourself with people who are, they're also drinking. You surround yourself with the like so that you don't stand out so much. And I remember just really being like, wow. and taking a good look. And through that treatment, I did yoga throughout that treatment. And I remember, the few things that I remember about it was that I remember the teacher's voice. And I remember that she was a recovered heroin addict. And I didn't believe her. Like, I really didn't believe her. Because it's like I would kind of look at her, like, to see if I, like, recognized a little bit of me in her somehow. And, like, I couldn't. So that was really wild. And then I remember I'd heard of Namaste before. But the way that she described it was, my higher self sees your higher self. And up until that point, I didn't think that I had a higher self. Like, I was just this, like, bad person. And I was like, that was a big turning point for me, because in the 12-step system in Alcoholics Anonymous that they put most people in, going through addiction, they want you to get a higher power, and that was always really challenging for me. So whenever I was able to use, my higher self, like if I was the best version of me, if I was the healthiest version of me, the one making, the best decisions for herself and those around her and things like this, that I was able to digest. So I was starting to be able to use this idea a little bit, which was big for me. And then I also remember telling myself, if I ever get this sobriety thing figured out, I'm going to look into this yoga thing. But it's like at the moment I didn't know I knew I couldn't do both. But I didn't want to get sober either. So even in my mind, I told myself, if I get this sobriety thing, I'm going to check into yoga, but I'm not going to get sober. Like, I remember telling myself, but I'm not going to. But if I did, but I'm not going to. And, like, shelving it. And in the end, this went on until I was 29. It was getting very, very severe. I mean, just like addiction does. It's like the amount that I needed in my body was more and more and more. So then the withdrawals were more and more and more. And I was having seizures from withdrawal. So whenever when I'm putting so much alcohol in my system and then it starts depleting, it can throw the body into seizure. And that's what withdrawal is. It's like you need to keep putting more in it. So it's like that medicine was actually my poison, this medicine of this alcohol that I needed that making me feel okay. It was also poisoning me by putting it in my system and also by not putting it in my system. It's like I was stuck. If I drank, it was just prolonging it. If I didn't drink, I was at a risk to have a seizure or die. A lot of people die from alcohol withdrawal. Wow. It's such a shock to the system to not put it in. So in order not to feel those symptoms, I would continue to drink. And while I would say I wanted to detox and I wanted to, do these things, it was too painful, and I would always end up, I might go to a detox center for 2 days and then I'd have to leave and go and drink. And I started visiting hospitals a lot because they would give me IVs and benzodiazepines like Xanax that would help the withdrawal symptoms. But then I would still leave. And when you mix Xanax and alcohol, it's not pretty. It's a blackout, essentially. So I would go to the hospital to get these drugs that would make me feel better, which I would say that I was taking because I wanted to quit drinking. But then I would just wind up doing them together, which would end up in me blacking out and ending up places I didn't know where I was, with people I didn't know who were, or in just bad scenarios, often, or back in another rehab or something like that. And by the end, no one was talking to me anymore. My family had cut me off. They had been sending me to rehabs all over the country prior. But it was becoming really clear to everyone I was completely heartbreaking my mother. She had to cut me off. I mean, who knows what I would just be calling wasted stories about needing money or how I'm sorry and I'm not going to do it, or I'd call crying, and the next time I would not remember calling and I would call screaming, and it was pretty crazy. And in the end, like I said, nobody was really talking to me, and so I was hanging out with people who I know had also relapsed. Because I was in an area where I came out of treatment. I'd moved to Austin, Texas, and the only people I knew were in recovery, which was pretty good. It's a pretty good thing. So they take you out of the scenario and they put you somewhere else so that you can't go back to like the old friends that you used to use with. But the problem is like once you relapse, the only people that you know are people that have already relapsed. That's who you call, because again, you want to surround yourself with people who are not making you feel out of place. So then I was with kind of, the worst of the worst people that I went to treatment centers with. We weren't partying, we weren't having fun, and we still acted like we were, but it wasn't casual, it was very serious, and started doing heroin then in the end. And I wound up overdosing, and I had like a type of a stroke or something. It was still not really clear what happened. But I came to, everyone had left that I was with. And it's like my brain had been electrocuted. And I made it back to this house that I had been renting, this little room I'd been renting in East Austin. It's across the street from a liquor store. And I went to the liquor store and bought enough alcohol for a couple days because I knew that I was going to just have to sit in my room and drink, like medicate myself. So I went into the room and I started drinking and nothing was happening. Like this pain in my body, that the only way that it was ever taken away was with alcohol. The alcohol was not working. So it's like the medicine was not working. And it was horrifying because that's the only thing that I knew. And I remember people telling me in like the recovery world that one day it's not going to work anymore. One day it's not going to work anymore. And, in hindsight, what I think that they meant was that one day the lifestyle is not going to work anymore. But at that moment, I thought they meant the substance. Like I thought they meant one day the substance is not going to work anymore. Like you get to a level where you like tap out. And thankfully that's what I thought, because I was like, oh my God, like this is the moment. Like it does not going to work anymore. Like it's not going to work anymore. And I can be high or I can be happy. And like these two things that used to go together are never going to go together again because it's not working anymore. And I really let that sink in, which everyone who knew me and loved me for years knew that it wasn't working. For many years. So that overdose was like such grace for me. Because I needed to be pushed to this point of being like, wow. Because I know that I would have killed myself. Or I wouldn't have killed myself, but I would have through the addiction. Mm-hmm. My mother told me during that time that she was just waiting for that phone call. Like every time the phone rang, that's what she thought it was. And so it was really a large piece of grace. And I reached out to a sober living home that I'd been kicked out of several months before because I was hiding my wine bottles around the house. And I told them that I wanted to come back. And I'm known to be the one that says she wants help and then doesn't. That goes to the hospital and leaves it. I was blacklisted from the ambulance in Austin, Texas. Like all of these things, I'd be like, come and get me. And they'd come and I'd be like, no. So I was known for this. And this place, though, let me come back in. I didn't have any money. They had one bed. They reserved one bed for a high-risk case with somebody that didn't have any money. And I think it was like a Sunday night. And they said, to be there on a Wednesday. And I came on a Tuesday night with my bag. And I was like, I'll sleep on your couch. Which is, unheard of from the person who will not let anybody help them. Then, here I am, begging, I will sleep on your couch. I don't care. And as soon as I walked in that door, it was like this giant exhale. All of a sudden, my safety system was allowed to work for a little bit. Because other than that, it was just, I was highly activated all the time. But to be in this room or to walk into this place where I knew that everyone was trying to get sober and everyone was doing the same thing. And I'd lived in sober houses many times, but this was different. And from that point on, a few days later, I started, I got a $30 for 30 days yoga thing. I went back to my mat because I knew that that's one of the only places that I felt safe. The places where I was checking in and knowing to do some work. And I started going every day. And since that time, that was about 5.5 years ago, my whole life has changed drastically. Unbelievably changed.
I'm sitting here and I'm just like receiving that really like wow kind of story. It's a kind of story that it's almost surprising that someone can go to that depth and be where you are right now, like how I've met you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I obviously I didn't meet that part, like that version of you. I'm meeting this version of you, and so to hear the story, it's like, whoa, wow, it's so inspiring to know that 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 someone can move through those kind of events and make it through and be an incredible yoga teacher today. Like wow. So it's really like moving to hear your story and. I guess my question, I think you kind of answered it. It's like, so the turning point was that moment, right, when you OD'd.
Yeah.
So that was the turning point, and that was enough is enough.
Yeah, it's like I knew for a long time, I didn't want to admit it to myself that like I was obsessed with finding a way to make this work. I was obsessed with, everyone telling me you're going to die. You're ruining your life, blah, blah, blah. And I wanted to be like, I'm having fun. It's fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I don't know how many times I've said that when I'm not. Like, I'm not fine. And it was like this stubbornness and this denial in me that, like, I really needed to digest that what I was doing was, it was killing me. Any source of happiness that I wanted. Like, I was this seeker since a little kid. I was always wanting something bigger and, I had this curious mind. And I was just, my life of wanting to travel the world and all of these things that I desired had, like, completely shrunk into where can I get the next bottle? Where can I get the next fix? Where can I get the next thing? It was like one foot in front of the other. And it's like I kind of realized through that thinking, like, I could be high or I could be happy, and like realizing that this formula was not working, like this formula that I was seeking.
And do you think you needed to have that kind of that loud of a wake-up call in order for something to dramatically change? Do you think a lot of people need that dramatic wake-up call to dramatically change?
I know that a lot of people don't.
Okay.
I know that a lot of people do. I know that a lot of people have dramatic things happen and they still don't. I mean, I know, people who, with children, or a lot of times you think like, oh, I'll have a child, that a lot of time that's not, it's not due to a lack of love for the child or a lack of love for your partner or a lack of love for whatever, or it's like this thing is insidious. It's like a parasitic. And people have different thresholds. Mine was low. Like, I was low bottom. Some people can change very quickly. It was too easy to lie to myself whenever I wasn't that sick. Even when I was sick, it was easy to lie to myself. So it's a very unique thing for everyone. But yeah, some people need to be pushed to the edge. I'm a stubborn girl. I still am. My therapist used to tell me, I would just drive all my accounts of my therapist crazy. But she would be like, oh my gosh. She was like, if you could ever get stubborn in the right direction, like, you would be unstoppable. And I'm just like, sitting there being a brat. She's like, oh my gosh, if you could just ever get stubborn in the other direction.
Yeah, but you are now, I guess, because of where you're going and the kind of transition that you've moved through. That's 5.5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, wow, that's incredible. It's incredible. It's very motivating. It's very inspiring, and it's very motivating for me to, like, hear a story like that and to know that you can, like, night and day, like, poof, where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
So you transform that stubbornness into this dedication, into this beautiful, medicine that you now, like, offer up to the world. And I guess my next question, just to kind of concretize the term addiction, like, how do you personally define addiction?
It's something that we do to get out of the present moment that we don't want to do. I've heard something recently that somebody said, Josh Corda from Dharma Punks, says that addiction is a replacement for people. And what he means by that is that we're a species who co-regulates, that we need to be able to process our emotions with other people. And it's something that we learn whenever we're very young, how to co-regulate, how to empathize, how to share our emotions, how to process how we're feeling. And that is vital to our survival, that we can process this way. And I think that often as addicts, we turn to things outside of ourselves to regulate our emotions. So whether it be work or sex or food, or it's like I'm soothing. If I'm uncomfortable, am I able to process it with another person? Am I able to process it through, some type of self-soothing techniques, or am I using something outside of me to dampen down? So really, if that's the definition that we're using, it can be, there's so many different things that can be an addiction. In terms of substance addiction, I think that it is a mental and a physical dependency. It's a mental obsession. And then there's a physical dependency. Like I was physically addicted. My body, if I were to stop, I would have a seizure. That was a physically dependent. A detox to me looks like my whole body is shaking and I'm sweating and I'm hallucinating that people are in my room. And it's a full-on physical thing. So then that's, even separate from the mental thing. There's so many different layers of it. It's wild. There's probably some type of genetic layer. Not saying that if your mother is that you are, but that you maybe have a predisposition. I don't know. I hope that someday that they figure it out. I think there's a cultural component, and there's lots of components.
Yeah, because you mentioned on your website, for example, you mentioned that a lot of us, or maybe all of us, face some sort of addiction in our lives, and it just can look and feel just different. When I think about addiction, there was one point in my life where I thought no, I don't. I'm lucky. I don't have any addictions. I used to be addicted to smoking pot, which is so true. I started that when I was 14 till I was 23. So that was a while. But after that, after I kind of overcame that, I said to myself, well, I don't have any other addictions. I've done it. I used to smoke cigarettes, used to smoke weed. I don't have addictions. But then when I look into it deeper, I start to, you addicted to certain thought processes, very addicted to sugar and chocolate, next level. Everyone always smiles and laughs when I say that, but it's really next level. I literally I can't go to sleep without it. Sometimes there are moments where I can't sleep, so I literally get on my bike, go buy some chocolate, eat it, and then it puts me to sleep. So it's that. It's really, really, really
that it's the opioid system in your body.
Okay.
What that chocolate does, it hits the opioids in our body.
Yeah, so my body
it's the ease.
give me, and I feel that. And then and I also at one point in my life, and then still I have this nervous addiction, I think, to picking aspects of my skin, right? Which is really strange because I don't even know where that come from. There's no story, there's no root, there's no, but it's something that just happened. And then I'm whenever I try to control, it's huh? So I started, and as soon as I started to think about what addiction means to me, I started to ask that question to friends as well about that, and I started to notice, okay, that's interesting. There are so many different forms, and it's what's a way to move through that. And I guess what you found is yoga, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think the biggest part about yoga for me is one, just getting back into my body. There's something that is beyond the stories. There's a big part of our brain, our limbic system, doesn't know language. It's formed before that we spoke. So it's we can't rationalize and cognitate our way out of certain things because that part of the brain doesn't know language. So having to get into the body to make some releases is very important. The breath, incredibly important. And I think with yoga, there's so much self-inquiry. So I'm drawn towards, even though I have a really physical practice, I like to move my body, especially when I first started doing yoga. I was power yoga crazy because I needed to move my body faster than my mind.
Okay.
I needed to have my mind chill.
Yeah.
Which required me to move my body very vigorously. But there's also this this self-inquiry, and I remember it always felt like the teacher was talking right to me, whatever she was saying. It was like talking right to me. It's like she knew. Sometimes I have to like look up from my mat. It's like, is she staring at me? Oh my God. But this process of self-inquiry, of, questioning my beliefs and my thoughts, and like, what are my mental tendencies? Like you mentioned, like the mind spin. Like, what am I, a blamer? Do I tend to digest everything like it's my fault? Do I tend to point things out? Do I, deny? What emotions do I not like to feel? What do I do when I'm uncomfortable? I mean, there's like a zillion questions that we can ask ourselves. And I'm like, I've never really got to know myself. So this process of creating a relationship with myself, and that's probably the juice of what I found on my mat. And movement is a metaphor. Like, what happens on our mat happens off our mat. It's wild.
Yeah. And it's amazing that it really captivated you. And the self-inquiry that you speak on, is that through the teacher that you followed, or is that how is that connected with yoga?
Well, the teachers that I were going to, and I got really lucky to go to some really amazing studios and have some amazing teachers in Austin. But the teachers that I was going to, they would blend like self-inquiry into the practice.
Okay.
Like there would be a Dharma talk, and it would be like, talking about compassion. Like, how do you speak to yourself? Like, how do you speak to yourself? Really? And they would weave these ideas into the class, and I'd be like, oh my God. Like, every time it was like just what I needed to hear. So then I started reading about the different limbs of yoga and the yoga philosophy, and things like that. So I'm definitely drawn towards a physical practice, but not just a physical practice. Like, I like weaving the yoga philosophy in, and now really the Buddhist philosophy is like my jam. And it really speaks to that, the elevator talk of Buddhism is like, human experience, we're going to suffer. We're going to suffer, and it's going to look a lot of different ways. My flavor of suffering looks like it manifested through drugs and alcohol, but what's underneath it is a fear of not being good enough, a fear of, being ostracized, of being unworthy. And, in those fears, everybody shares. They manifest differently. So it's like we're dealing with the suffering. It's like drugs and alcohol. Yeah, they posed a problem for me, but the problem was something deeper, which still comes up. So it's being able to look at that and sit with that and get to know yourself on that level. Because while painful things are going to happen in our life, like even Buddha got old and died, lost people he loved. I mean, pain is going to happen, but it's like, how do you want to suffer? Do you want to suffer? How much do you want to suffer over it? And it always has something to do with clinging onto the past or the future, or running from pain, grabbing onto pleasure. I did not want to feel, so I grabbed onto extra things that I thought made me feel good, but then it started me in this loop of feeling bad and then feeling good, and I needed this to feel good and not feel bad, and didn't want to feel my shame, so I'd drink it down. Or I didn't want to feel how much it hurt my mother, so I just would black out. And we can eat our feelings away. Eating helps us soothe ourselves. It's like a nurturing thing. It's like we're trying to self-nurture. Like, where are we not getting nurturing somewhere else? It's like, no, I'm going to nurture myself, and it's not conscious. Or restrict. It's just, we're funny monkeys.
Yeah, we are.
And it's so interesting, and it's something that is shared. This, this experience of the beautiful mess of being human. But when we have the courage to look at that, to look at what's really going on instead of just going through the patterns and going through the things, and life can get really big. And you really give yourself permission to feel all the things, because you can't selectively numb emotions. Like, if I don't want to feel sad, well, I'm also not going to feel that joyful, because you can't just place an order for your emotions.
Yeah, press a button and then just switch. Yeah. And can you give me an example of how you would speak to yourself before, and how do you speak to yourself now?
Good question. I think that I made a lot of excuses before.
Okay.
I think I blamed people a lot. Like, for me, I would outwardly direct. Rather than... And I would do both, but often I would outwardly project if I'm irritated or if something is not going right. I was going to blame it on somebody instead of being like, oh, you're so stupid, you're so this. Like, I wouldn't take, which is not a good way either, but I mean, I definitely wasn't going to take responsibility. Like, I would rather it be something outside of myself. And I think that kept me stuck, that the part of not taking responsibility. I would deny that there was a problem, that there was any of this. People were just on my back. Like, I need you to get off my back. Mom just needs to get off my back. You know, the cops are assholes. The bosses, whatever it was. And I think that was my biggest tendency.
And now?
Now I have to watch it. So what's really funny was what happened the other day. It's always my fault. It's like, well, damn, if this isn't the consequences of my own actions. It's little things that I notice it. Like, the other day I could not get my MacBook to work. Like, I could not get the charger to work. I could not figure it out. I was in Malaysia. I wind up going to the front desk and I'm like, the outlets aren't working. Several times, and she kept trying to point me around. I even called Apple support. So I'm on the phone with Apple support, and I'm like, my brand new computer is not turning on. Because they're like, how are you doing? I'm like, not very well. My brand new computer is not turning on. And then the lady comes in my room, and in Malaysia, you have to press a button to turn the outlet on. And I'm like, oh my God. I couldn't even respond to the Mac guy. I was just like, thank you to the lady. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And I do that all of it. They're like, oh, is the power on? No. Just ridiculous. And then I was at, Air Asia is this airline here that is kind of notoriously not a very good airline. So I was at the counter the other day and I was like, they couldn't find my ticket. And in my head, I'm kind of like, of course, Air Asia, just incompetent.
Yeah.
And they couldn't find my ticket. And what happened is I booked my ticket for the wrong month.
Oh, wow.
It was supposed to be like February 18th, and I actually booked it for March 18th.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just being shown over and over and over. It's like, honey, it's you. And it's so interesting. Now it's like a cosmic joke. Now I'm like, of course, it's me. But finding like, okay, what is my part in this? What is my part in this? Really having to step back and take responsibility. And those are kind of like jokey things, but in my interpersonal relationships, of being really cautious and really conscious of how I'm presenting and how I'm and always accepting something. Like, if I can't find something, my part of it, then I'm not looking hard enough.
Yeah, true.
Like, we co-create dynamics, and it's not like, maybe it's not always, somebody's, it's complicated. But
I mean, we both have to take responsibility for our parts in any dynamic. It can't just we can't put all the responsibility on someone else outside, And if something's happening that isn't agreeable to us in our world in that moment, it's also to ask oneself, like, but I'm accepting that behavior, which is my role as well. Right? Yeah. So it is a co-creative experience. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I found that through Vipassana meditation. I found the responsibility was very, very important, and that also led to self-inquiry, because if you're taking self-responsibility, then you have to look in inside the bonnet of your car and be like, okay, so why? And then inquire into why that, and maybe I did this to get that, and ooh, that's interesting, and to treat oneself more kind of like as a detective of your inner world.
Yeah, totally.
Very interesting. Yeah,
and it becomes fascinating, and then it piques my curiosity. Of myself, and I'm like, where did this come from? And then often I'm like, where have I felt this before? Sometimes I can close my eyes and like a feeling will come up, and I can be like, where have I felt this before? And often you can trace it back to something a long time ago.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, I'm actually not even mad about this event. Like, this is triggering something else that's happened. And I'm really not even mad. I'm actually scared of, and it's like, it's wild. We're complex. And the more that we or vulnerable enough to like do that seeking and to do that questioning, because often you're not going to not like what you find. It's much easier just to like say, he did it.
Yeah.
She did it.
Yeah.
Air Asia did it. To be like, oh, okay, I see my patterns. You know, and I still see my addiction come up in different ways now. And like, you know, watching that, what does it stem from? Because sometimes I'll have some stuff come up around food or procrastinating, or if I'm like having a challenge in like a personal relationship, I'll just like zone out into emails. I can't deal with it. And like looking at all these things, it's like, what am I avoiding? And a question that always comes back for me is like, what do you do when you're in discomfort? Like, what do you do? What do you do?
Eat chocolate or work a lot. I get sucked into work.
And I think work is easy because whenever we're good at what we do and we're competent, like we're like self-rewarding ourselves, kind of. You're like, yeah, this is somewhere where we feel like we're in control. I'm good at this. I know what's going on here. You, this person that I love, I don't know how to handle this. It's scary. But I know how to do this. Let me do this. I'm in control here. So it's like this fear of lack of control.
So do you feel that one can be cured of their addictions, or they can just tame their addictions?
I think that it's a big debate in the kind of recovery world. For me, because you know you don't want to be labeled forever as an addict or an alcoholic.
Yeah.
So there is cons about being put in a box, but there's also cons against being like, I'm cured. Because then there's this apathy and I might just drink again. And then if I drink again, I cannot drink. Like, I know myself. Like, I will never be cured to the point where I can drink again. That is totally fine with me.
Yeah.
But if cured means that I'm not going to have this addictive mindset, or that I'm not going to always be thinking about alcohol, I don't think about alcohol at all. But if cured means I can drink again, no. So, but it's a psychological thing of like, am I finding freedom in the fact that I'm saying that I'm cured, or like I'm no longer an addict? I'm no longer under enslavement of my addiction, of my alcoholism, but I guess I don't call myself an alcoholic anymore. I say that I spent half of my life as an alcoholic. I used to say that I was an alcoholic, even just up until a few years ago. I think that it's personal. I think that there is, pros and cons to each, but how people identify. But it depends on, it just depends.
Do you feel like your general state of whatever you define as happiness or contentment, or do you think that's improved?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, before I was just in the throes of the chemicals in my body, and I felt like I was a puppet.
Like a roller coaster.
Just a roller coaster, and I was just like pulled this way or pulled this way or this way or this way, or I had no control, I had no freedom in my body. And now, I have full sovereignty over where I am in the world, what I do with my body. I'm not pulled by, and I'm sure I'm still definitely pulled by my hormones and things like that, but the freedom that I have now is just unbelievable. Often I forget. It's easy for me to like tell a story about where I came from, and it feels like a story, like about somebody else almost, because it just feels so far removed. But then I can close my eyes and like just, oh my God, just the amount of suffering that addiction causes was just, I don't wish it on anyone, but I know that so many people deal with it. It's incredibly, incredibly painful. So the gratitude that stems from that, and people used to say in meetings, in 12-step meetings, which is not something that I do anymore, but I'm a grateful alcoholic. Or they introduce themselves like, I'm a grateful alcoholic. And I remember being like sitting there being like, oh, shut up. Like not understanding that. I was a total brat, being like, what? Like, I'm never going to be grateful for this. It's like, I had cancer. Like, I'm not going to be grateful for cancer. Or, like, I'm not going to be grateful for this. Like, you know, this extra head. Or, you know, it may as well have been like an extra head, like I had a Siamese twin. Or, and, you know, now I can really say, like, I am grateful for my experience.
Wow.
And the impact that it's had on other people, the impact that it's had on me, and that it's been able to turn around and the net worth of it in terms of healing and the message that's gotten out to other people. I think that it's the net, you know, the net value of it is positive.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And I think we're like coming kind of like towards the end of our conversation, although I could probably have it forever. What would you say are like the fundamental benefits of yoga if someone were interested and maybe hadn't ever tried it before, and maybe even recovering from addiction?
Mm-hmm. I would say the fundamental benefits would be regulating your nervous system. You know, every time that we inhale, it's activating our sympathetic nervous system, which is, you know, the fight or flight. Every time we exhale is parasympathetic. So all day long, you know, we're doing this at little things, but we can really control our nervous system with our breath. Like, that is the language of our nervous system. And that's such a powerful tool. So just learning how to do that, learning how to up and down regulate ourselves is just a vital tool in itself, if that's all it is. You know, the movement to release stories, memories, traumas, just to open the body. It feels good to feel strong, to be able to feel in control of your body, especially if you're coming out of addiction, where you come for traumas as well, physical traumas, to be able to recapture a sense of control of your body rather than have given that away. The creating the relationship with ourselves, the getting to know our nuances, what comes up in my mind when someone leaves me in chair pose too long, because I'm always like, this teacher, and then I'm like, no, I'm not going to blame it on the teacher. It's like, can I be with this? Like, can I be in this uncomfort? Can I be in this discomfort? Like, this is my practice. I want to learn how to be uncomfortable. Can I breathe deeper here? You know, and it's like bringing it back in, and it's so just, this is a metaphor. And it's invaluable. It's a safe space. For me, it became a safe space, and I think it is for a lot of people. A place to check in, a place to be like, okay, this is my time. It's ritualistic. We're a ritualistic species. Like, how can we create better rituals rather than coming home and lighting up, rolling a joint?
I love doing that.
Lighting it. Yeah, it's like this whole ritual at a certain time of the day. It's like after you eat, or after work, or after sex, or, you know, whatever it is. It's like, can we create some healthier rituals? And then the community was a big aspect of it. I didn't even speak to that, but, you know, the community that coming back into connection, not only in my own body, but learning how to connect with other people, finding people that I could really, co-regulate with. I could really, like, oh, I'm sitting here and we're actually dropping in, and is vital to that sense of safety.
Beautiful. Yeah. I mean, I'm sold. I should start yoga right away. I've been more.
And you do so much movement, though. You do so much dance.
Yeah, I'm a dancer for sure. So dance, 5 rhythms is my practice. That's what I found. I need that movement. And when I had a teacher actually in school. That's how I found yoga, who used to say to me, you're brilliant, but you're just so scattered and unfocused. Like, you should do yoga. And he would ask me every day, have you gone to yoga yet? Have you gone to yoga yet? And I think his approach was probably not the best approach, because I was like, screw you, like, freaking yoga. Why do I need to go to yoga? Like, I thought it was like being sentenced to something. And I did start it back then. That was quite a few years ago. But what I realized is that back then, like, my brain was just too on for yoga. So I went down the total opposite in terms of, like, no movement, Vipassana meditation. So yoga's now reemerged in my life. But now that I feel like the principle of Vipassana meditation that like had me like enjoy some stillness for a minute. I've now bring that into yoga, so that's coming. It's coming back into my life. But yeah, I can't live without movement. Now that I've like been reintroduced to dance, and like it's exactly what you said, movement and breath. You know, it's life change and self inquiry. Those three fundamentals, life changing. If I don't dance once a week, I don't know. You know, you feel it in the body, and definitely feel it in the mind. It's like this knowingness of, actually, like, there's a contrast between what's happening in my brain and what's happening in my body. Now, I experience that when I hold space sometimes for 5 rhythms. My brain will go into this critical, like, that transition was too fast, or like, they're not enjoying themselves, or that person left your class, and the brain's like saying all these things, but then I'm just like, dance through that, breathe, dance through that, and I dance through that, and I'm like, okay, that's my brain. That's not the reality. That's not like, those are just voices. Those are just like this a mechanism, or like I used to say, like a CD that's going that CD that gets stuck and it's just like repeating itself. That's just a repeating CD that just needs to lose power. So if I just keep dancing, moving, doing yoga, something like that, then over time I'll have that contrast. I'll be able to have more distinction between what is like grounded, real in this reality, and what's just like my brain kind of like mentally obsessing over something, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so to close, I'm just gonna ask you: is there anyone that you follow? Are there any like videos aside from your incredible platform? Videos or people that you followed before and you would recommend to someone if they were interested in doing yoga, or just like an author? I know you love to read. Like, are there books that really like supported you in this journey?
Yeah, some of the things that I've really helped me. There's a book called The Yamas and the Niyamas by Deborah Adele that was amazing. The Yamas and the Niyamas are essentially kind of like the Yogi 10 Commandments of like how to be towards yourself and how to be in the world.
Oh.
And she does a really good job of making it really relatable, and taking this ancient philosophy and making it really relatable. And it was super beautiful. And a book called Buddha's Brain by Rick Hansen. He's a neuroscientist. It's incredible. Okay. And he's linking neuroscience and Buddhism and our biology. It's fascinating to learn about like what's happening when I'm anxious, like what's happening in my brain, or what's happening when I'm in fear, and all of these things. And he has a really nice way of like I'm not crazy. It's like my limbic system is being hijacked at the moment. Like that's what's happening. Whenever we learn more about our systems, like we learn more about what's going on inside our body, when like we're having an anxiety attack, or when we're having jealousy, or like what's all of these different things. It's like, well, what's the evolutionary purpose? What's the biological? What's actually happening in my body? It feels to me anyway, it eases that. It's like, oh, I'm doing a human thing right now. I'm having a human thing happening right now. And then two podcasts, Tara Brach and Dharma Punks. Both of them are incredible. And they're both Buddhist podcasts that are just like amazing. Tara Brach I used to listen to when I was having anxiety attacks. Often I couldn't even like knew what she was saying. It was just her voice was like, would calm me down. But she's an incredible teacher.
Okay, beautiful. And I'll probably post these on the podcast site anyway for people to see. And if someone wanted to find you, how do they find you?
I'm easy to find. Cold Chance Yoga on all the things. So Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Same with the website. Yeah.
And you have like a new platform?
I do. I have a platform where on YouTube I release short videos, like 10 to 20 minute videos. And then on Om Yoga Tribe is a platform that I just started, and they'll have those short videos, but then I'm also releasing a 1-hour class every month.
And hopefully we'll somehow sneak
Portugal.
you to Portugal?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah,
Okay.
indeed.
Okay, cool.
Sadie.
Wow, Sadie really responded. So that's the dog's reaction to Cole mentioning that she's leaving.
She's not happy about it.
She's not happy about it.
She's a good mommy coming now.
Thank you so much, Cole. That was amazing. That was really inspiring, and I feel very grateful to have had this conversation and to just receive all this like wisdom from your experience. It's very grounding, and I will continue to follow your videos.
Yeah.
They're really great, and I love the way that you hold yourself, the way that you communicate. And it's amazing. I'm like so proud of you for the journey that you've been on. You know, it's incredible. And to also know that you recovered your relationship with your mother too, which I can imagine if you're being like cut off and then, you know, reopening that's amazing.
Yeah.
It brings, I can imagine if someone was in that position right now, an addict trying to recover, you know, maybe it's hard to believe that a future like the one that you've created for yourself is possible. Listening to this could be inspired and
Yeah, it's all possible.
to move in the right direction. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you
Yes,
for
my
being you.
pleasure.
Thank you for listening to another episode of My Guru. Be sure to follow us on Insta at My Guru, spelled My6Guru, or at my personal Insta, Anna Dream Maria.